the ASM artist. What's going on, guys? Welcome to ASMR, but it's 1984. The reason I'm calling it that is because I'm filming this on a camcorder, which was actually the first camera I ever had to make videos, and I'll tell you a little story about that. But yeah, you might notice the quality's not as good as my usual camera, because this was like, when did I buy this? Probably 2016, and maybe even 2015. And it was like $250 then. So, it's not going to be the best ever. But yeah, I can actually remember I was like a freshman in high school when I wanted to start a YouTube channel, which you definitely shouldn't look up that YouTube channel. Definitely don't look up non-major and watch those old videos of me as like a 15-year-old. But I can remember like actually sitting down at my coffee table and counting out change so I could buy this camera, because I was like that excited about doing videos, and I guess the excitement never went away, but it's really cool. I figured out a couple things that I never knew about this before. I let my dad borrow it for when he went hunting, so he could just like record the deer, but then I asked for it back so I could make this video. But it's cool. You'll notice I'm looking off to the side instead of above my camera, because it has a flippy screen, which even my cameras now don't have. I can talk a little bit about why camcorders are, like why people even have camcorders, and like what's the difference, like what makes it a different kind of camera. So these used to be like the main option, especially in digital cameras for doing video, obviously. And the problem is they have a pretty small image sensor, like a 1-inch sensor or smaller, which is like old news. That's like old technology. That's why they're basically obsolete, is because they're just not capable of the higher image quality. And it's just been like the past 5 to 7 years, really, maybe like 10 for earliest stages, where larger sensor sizes that were just traditionally photography cameras are adding video features, and they have interchangeable lenses. And obviously camcorders, they just have like this, like you hold it like this and you just zoom with the thing on top, so you don't change the lens. But yeah, that's kind of what the X-T3 is. It's like mainly a photography camera, but they added the video features just kind of recently in those kind of cameras, and that's why they're a lot better. Mirrorless cameras and DSLRs are now better for videos, making these pretty much obsolete. But I didn't do any research or have the money to even afford that kind of stuff at the time when I got this camera. And to be honest, this camera is a lot more convenient. Like, if it's not a huge step down in image quality, I'm actually going to consider maybe using this every once in a while, just because, I don't know, there's just a much more hassle with dialing in your settings and stuff, and this is like full automatic, and it doesn't have a record limit, and it's just like, I don't know, the colors don't look bad. It's definitely not going to be as sharp as usual, so it won't be as impressive as the main thing, so it might be just worth the trouble to use my better camera. But I definitely got one good use out of it for this video. Anyway, that's my little story time. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about that. I'm so happy that the channel is growing, by the way. I guess I'll just talk to you for this video and do some hand sounds, because even though the title is like probably not going to get any views, it's like I like doing the creative titles and stuff like that, but they never, I don't know, actually they don't do that bad. But yeah, guys, I'm so excited. We are closing in on 3,000 subscribers. We might even be at 3K by the time I upload this video. If not, we're very close. Don't unsubscribe and troll me when we get close. Eventually that's going to happen. There's going to be a large enough audience, and there's going to be a lot more trolls in the comments. But for now, I'm really relishing and loving the fact that you guys are just such a positive community, and super nice, super positive. And then I'm starting to see you guys like interact with each other in the comment section, which is super cool. It's getting to the point where, especially if I upload multiple videos in a week, I don't know. Like, there's enough comments where it takes a significant amount of time at this point to reply to every comment. But I definitely try my best, and I at least read them and react to them. So I hope no one's getting mad at me for, I used to reply to literally every comment, but that's a lot easier when there's 5 comments. I don't know. It's not that bad. I should just, I don't know. I have ADHD brain, so it's hard to sit down and force myself to do one thing for a long time. And I'm sure a lot of you will understand that. I do want to do a video. I just want to think about how I'll do it creatively and put it together with different audio and visual aspects. But I want to do an ASMR for anxiety video. By the way, let's try some visuals on this camera. It has a smaller image sensor, so let's talk about what that really means. So just physically, a smaller image sensor is probably that big. It's real tiny. It's probably the same size, maybe tiny bit bigger as your phone image sensor that is behind your phone camera or cameras. So that means it's just not capable of gathering as much light, which means you can't, with a smaller image sensor, get as shallow of the depth of field, because gathering a bunch of light kind of goes hand in hand with getting a shallow depth of field, because your aperture being wider open will get more light, and that's just how you get a razor thin margin of something in focus and a nice blurry background. But that just means this needs more light to look good, so it's going to crank up the ISO faster than other cameras. I keep wanting to go to this side because I feel like I'm constantly in this ear on this side. It's opposite for me when I'm recording, so it can be a little trippy. Anyway, the reason I said that is because pretty much with my other camera, I'd put my hand up and it would be in focus and my face would be blurry. But because this image sensor is smaller and I'm using more light, even though it kind of looks darker to me on the screen, I'll see what it actually is in post. But it's pretty much all in focus, which gives you more creative limitations and less you can really do with your camera. Let's do some cork tapping. But yeah, I don't know, do you guys have a camcorder? That's pretty much all my family ever had. I was the first. I did a lot of firsts in my family, the first person to really want to get into and understand cameras, and maybe not the first, but one of the first in a couple generations of people who plays guitar or an instrument. Oh, that's interesting. Maybe it's not reversed, because this looks backwards to me, even though I hope it's not. I hope it's not backwards. Because of that, I noticed. So I don't know if you've ever recorded yourself. You might not understand this if you haven't, but usually you'll lean one way in real life and watch yourself on the screen lean the opposite. But this shows you the backwards version of it, so it looks correct and is more intuitive. When I move one way, I look like I move the same way, and then I believe they flip it in post. This is a Sony camera, by the way, which would be one of the biggest competitors to, it's what I was between when I was getting my professional camera that I use all the time, was Sony and Fuji. And I mainly went with Fuji because it was a lot cheaper, and it does have a smaller image sensor. So there's a whole bunch of different image sensors. Let's just say your phone is at a less than a 1-inch sensor, and 1 inch is a 1-inch sensor is what is in drone cameras. That's why they're so small. And then there's micro four thirds, which is basically obsolete because phone cameras use computational methods of putting pictures together that basically looks better than a micro four thirds image sensor that doesn't do that. And then there's ASPC, which is my camera size, which is a little bit bigger than micro four thirds. And there's ASP-H, which is pretty uncommon actually. So basically ignore that one. And there's full frame, which is the standard. It's equivalent to what used to be 35 millimeter film, which was just the standard professional film back then. And there was like basically the equivalent of ASPC in smaller formats. There was like 16 millimeter film and different kinds. Everything in photography is very much based in cameras in general, is very much based in tradition, and not much has changed. Like the way that lenses work, and I mean shutter speed, aperture, in ISO, are basically all from the film era, made into a more modern version of that. Instead of ISO being like a digital gain of adding light artificially to your image, it used to be different sensitivities of film, so you couldn't change your ISO. It would just be you had ISO 400 film in your camera and you shot that whole roll, and then if you knew you're going to be in darker light, you might get ISO 1600 film or whatever, which would have more grain back then, which is now digital noise. It's the same thing. Anyway, this was just the perfect, shooting with this camcorder, the perfect video to really talk about cameras and stuff. And I think that's like my most specific niche that you guys seem to like. I might as well just talk about that. I got a comment recently, and like I said, even if I don't reply to absolutely everybody, I do read absolutely everybody's comments eventually. But a comment was basically like a camera talk for dummies or whatever, and somebody replied to that, which was the cool thing I was talking about with you guys, like responding to each other and it becoming a community. Somebody thought it was interesting that autofocus is in the lens and not the camera, which is actually in both. It depends, because Nikon has it a specific way. This is interesting because this is like, I've been learning about the history of different camera brands and how they work. But Nikon has the F mount, which dates back to like the 1950s. So they've been using the same, like the same mount that you could take any of the lenses from 1950 up until today and put it on any of their cameras with the F mount. But because of that, when they first made it, it didn't have autofocus, and then eventually autofocus was created, and they made the conscious choice to keep using the same mount. So Nikon had to make it so there is a motor drive to autofocus the lens built into their cameras, which is kind of confusing because since they have different mounts than just the F mount, the newer ones that they made after the F mount actually have the motor drive in the lens like everybody else, and it can be really confusing. But yeah, for the most part, with the exception of Nikon, because they decided to stick with their old ways, like Canon and Fuji and everything else, now that we're on mirrorless cameras, is basically the autofocus is in the body for the most part, and that's where the intelligence of the computational part of knowing what to focus on and being able to see your face and track it, that's in the camera itself. But then the lens also has to have support for that with different kinds of motors and stuff to actually move the focus. So that's pretty technical, but that's kind of cool. Somebody was curious about that. If you guys are really interested in this stuff, the channel that I've been watching a ton lately is Tony and Chelsea Northrup, which is one of the most popular photography channels. And yeah, they have a podcast called Picture This, the Picture This Photography Podcast, which would be the name of mine if I started the podcast, because somebody said about making a podcast, which would be really cool, because I have the ability to talk to a camera or just talk for a long time uninterrupted. Basically, I haven't stopped since I started filming. Let me get another trigger. See, the thing with this camera is it's all auto settings. So generally what that means, and you'll see it with phones, with people recording their phone, they'll hold their hand up and all of a sudden it'll get really dark or the colors will change. And that's because the white balance or the exposure is an automatic setting. So it's trying to change when it sees a change in the scene. But this camera, I don't see that. It stays the same, which is nice for it being auto. Oh, I know why I want to keep talking this ear, because I am looking over there, so I keep being in that ear. It's going to annoy me to no end. Oh, by the way, I just thought of this randomly. Another thing that the smaller image sensor can't do is it doesn't have what's called dynamic range, which is something that the Fuji does exceptionally well. Basically, the bigger image sensor you have, the more dynamic range you have. And the Fuji, for being an ASPC camera, has the dynamic range essentially of a full frame camera. But I'm seeing in this right now, like, the blacks are very black, and like the difference between the darkest part of like my headphones and the exposed part of my face is pretty dramatic. That's like really, really dark, and this is pretty bright in comparison. So it doesn't have great dynamic range, which could be cool creatively, but it's also pretty limiting if you don't have the option to have more. That means if I went and filmed outside with this, the sky would probably be pure white, because it just couldn't or I would be like really, really dark if the sky was also in the frame, because it's trying to adjust for the two really different exposures. Anyway, I think I've nerded out about cameras enough. So I'm going to do some more visuals here, and then we're going to sign off. I don't like that I'm looking next to the camera, though. I almost don't notice it when I'm looking just above it. Did I see? I thought I saw some blue on my... I'm sorry, I'm so all over the place. The Kelly Belly inspired whatever this is. J in sign language. I think I said this last time I did this trigger. J, A, B. I don't know exactly. You know what they should do? This would not make much sense, but it'd be cool if they added emojis for each of the different like hand gestures for all the different letters in sign language. I don't remember them all. Whatever. I took sign language for like a quarter or half of a year in high school, so... Okay, well, I think that is all for now. I'd like just doing the recording with different cameras and stuff. So this is cool. I'm excited to see how good it looks, and like how much worse it looks than my usual camera. Maybe it will be like almost as good, and I'll be like, what? I think I could also... So this was my first camera I ever got. I told you the whole heartwarming story about me counting the change for it. And then after that, I had this for a while, and I was kind of falling out of using it as much, because I got bored of the channel that I had in high school. So then I eventually was like, I want to upgrade. So my dad actually for Christmas bought me this Nikon DSLR camera, which is like an entry level. It's called a D3300, which is one of the most popular first cameras for people from Nikon. But I could do a video because it actually has the same image sensor size as my Fuji cameras, which is like my main pro body. So it also has an ASPC sensor. So maybe the next video for the channel, I'll record on that, and we'll see how different it looks. And you can see maybe how two different camera manufacturers will see colors differently, and there's just something about how they make things look. It's just different. I don't know how to explain it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to me ramble. I hope it was relaxing or entertaining or informative or any of the above or all of the above. I'm going to stop rambling now. I feel like I can't stop now that I've started. All right, leave a like on this video. Leave a comment down below. And give me some more ideas, suggestions. What do you want to see? Do you like these kind of creatively titled videos like this, where it's kind of about the concept, and then you get here and it's also a bunch more to it than just that one singular concept? Or would you prefer if it was like more, I don't know, it's a little more boring to me, or like more cut and dry, where it's like trigger assortment, hand sounds, like a lot of people do? I know that's going to be like the most popular, but this is like the most fun for me. So I'm going to try to figure out my balance, and I kind of want to see where you're at and what you enjoy more. Do you like that I do this stuff like more uniquely, or would you kind of prefer the more standard version of things? I do want to know what you think of that. I just genuinely don't know. I feel like there's going to be people on both sides of the fence, and I kind of want to see where the majority is. And if it's anywhere near 50-50, I'll just kind of keep what I've been doing and go down the middle. Anyway, that's enough talking. Thanks for watching. Bye.